I'm so excited you're here with me today because we are transforming what were boring scraps into gorgeous pieces for your junk journal. Today is all about creating beautiful pieces with those old odds and ends you have in front of you. In my last video, I turned very boring scraps like the ones you see here into absolute gorgeous gems. Honestly, they could barely be called scraps. Like, they are so vintage, distressed, and gorgeous, and can really be used in any sort of projects that you're working on. If you want to see the process I used to transform a huge heap of these boring scraps into beautiful vintage distressed scraps, I will link that above and in the description box. Now let's get to crafting with these. Today, I'm showing you 3 of my favorite scrapbusting projects. The first being snippet rolls. These are snippet rolls, though a little bit different like the ones that you've maybe seen before. For these snippet rolls, you're just going to want to grab some packing tape, your scraps, and a few pieces of ephemera that we can use as focal points, whether that be stickers, probably ideally some smaller stickers, or some things that you've maybe fussy cut out from magazines or other pieces like that. I'm also grabbing a few postage stamps, which, by the way, if you don't collect them, you really should. These are beautiful pieces of ephemera you can use in your junk journals. If you like a wide assortment from different countries like I do, I actually found a seller on AliExpress that sells real, genuine, they're not fake, they're real, genuine postage stamps from all around the world. And I got each pack of these for only a couple of bucks. Incredible, right? I think these are some of the easiest snippet rolls you will ever make, and it's a great way to bust through a ton of your scraps. And there's something about the snippet roll when you're overlapping things on top of each other and adding a few focal points. It's very, very easy, and you end up with what I think is a pretty finished, like polished looking piece of ephemera. Of course, you can use them in a multitude of ways. You can use them on your cover boards as pockets, as belly bands, or chop them up and just add them as little additions and pops of color on your journal pages. So you want to start by pulling out some packing tape and unraveling it. Cut yourself a piece that, I don't know, you don't want it so long that you can't control it. I cut my pieces shorter because I wanted them to all fit within the camera screen or the lens. You could make them a bit longer if you wanted, but I have to say there were a couple of times where the tape when I was trying to kind of make some cuts and put the papers down on it, the tape did start to like wrap around on itself and I had to pry it back apart. So I do think going with shorter pieces is probably better. When we get further into the video, I'll show you. Basically, it doesn't really matter, because if you want to create true snippet rolls and wind them together around a spool, you essentially just sew them together. So it doesn't really matter how short or long you make them initially. You can attach them and wind them around on a spool. So don't worry about that. I would say whatever piece you feel like you have control over and can manage is probably how long you want to go. Now, when it comes to choosing papers, I would say don't overthink it. They look better when they're a little bit haphazard. The one thing I will tell you is I would definitely try and add some contrasting colors. So for example, maybe layer up some book pages, and then that maroon colored paper I had, maybe, I would put that down next, and then maybe a light page or some more book pages, and then that darker colored bit. So aside from just repeating like contrasting colors, that's probably all the advice I have to tell you. These look so polished, I'm telling you, when you're done. Now you'll see here that I'm attaching them with a glue stick. You don't necessarily have to do that, especially if you have a stronger tape. The adhesive on the tape is probably enough to get them to stay. Now, I do end up sewing these, and I say that with a couple of caveats, and I will explain that a little bit later in the video. If you're going to be sewing these, you really don't have to use your glue stick at all. The one time you do want to use your glue stick, especially if you're not sewing these, is you know, there are definitely points at which the papers are going to layer on top of each other and won't be coming into contact with the adhesive on the tape. That's when I would definitely recommend putting in some glue stick. But other than that, especially if you're sewing them, you really just need to get them to stick to the tape enough to get them to the sewing machine. And don't worry about any paper hangover. Once you've attached paper and have completely covered your tape, you're just going to flip your tape over and then cut along the edge of the tape to get any hangovers. And a lot of times those scraps are big enough that you can use them for the next snippet roll. So don't throw them away. We will be using our scraps in their entirety today. So I have to tell you, I love the look of scrappy snippet rolls that are sewn. My sewing machine completely rebelled against me doing this project, and I suspect it's because of the adhesive on the tape. So I will caution you with that. Now, throughout this process, or maybe it was just a fluke, I was getting a ton of nesting, not even nesting, like my sewing machine was pausing and it was like audibly, it was making this terrible noise and it was struggling terribly, and all of the thread was bunching around the bobbin. So I essentially took the foot plate off, cleaned all the dust and everything under it, and what I essentially discovered was that my sewing machine did a lot better through this adhesive tape with a straight stitch as opposed to a zigzag stitch. Maybe it's just a coincidence. What I initially ended up discovering was that, and I am no sewing expert by any stretch, so take this with a grain of salt. After replacing my needle and doing all the things that I was supposed to do, what I found that worked was going slow, but not too slow, okay? And then finally, I had this bottle of perfume sitting next to me, and I thought, you know what, I bet you it's that my needle is getting completely gummed up. What if after each snippet roll, I just spray the needle with some perfume, which has rubbing alcohol in it, alcohol obviously, and just spray it on the needle and just rub my like finger up and down to just get the gum off from the adhesive, and it worked like a charm. I'm telling you, I didn't have any more issues with whatever it was doing before. My thread wasn't, because before the other thing that was happening was it was like sticking to my thread and then it was breaking and the tension was all wrong because of it. And I'm telling you, just going up and down. Now, if your needle is bent, that's one thing, you just need to replace the needle. But I'm telling you, like, it made a huge difference. Just like maybe even halfway through the snippet roll, if I noticed that it was struggling a little bit, I would just spray a little bit of rubbing alcohol on it and use my finger to clean off the adhesive. And I'm telling you, that's the only reason why I got through this project. Now, if you don't even want to test the waters, I completely understand. Then just put your scraps down with a little bit of glue stick in addition to the tape, and I think you'll be just fine. Once your snippet roll is put together either with glue or sewing or both, grab some cool focal points and we are going to just add a couple little bits to this to really make it interesting and decorative and vintage, beautiful, whatever theme you are going for, which actually is the best thing about these. These are so versatile. You can make plant theme ones, you can make a vintage, grunge, steampunk ones. Those look incredible. I'm probably going to make some beach themes ones because I'm in full-on summer crafting mode and am working on an ocean themed journal. You can make whatever snippet rolls that you want. And again, this is a perfect project because whenever you're at the end of your, you can certainly grunge up scraps like I did, or you can just take your whole heap of scraps. I know that you have left over when you finish a project and you're like, what do I do with this? I have mountains of scraps left over on my desk. How do I even move on to the next thing? I'm drowning here. Well, after you're done with your projects, these are, or after you're done with a specific theme journal, this is a perfect project to clean up and out from under your mess. As you see, I have a few packs of, well, more than a few packs of ephemera I've gotten from AliExpress. I have some ephemera like sticker books I really wanted to use. I really need to start using up this stuff too. So I kind of just grabbed a whole heap of things I thought would make good focal points. The one thing I really wanted to point out, those sort of Tim Holtz knockoff ephemera packs that I have, they're not stickers. They're sort of like chipboard cutouts. You need to keep in mind, if you truly want to wrap these snippet rolls over upon themselves, those are not going to bend. They're not going to allow you to roll your snippet rolls up. So if you're going to keep these in a pack, like I don't know, like sometimes I'll keep my ephemera in like photo albums with the clear pockets just so I can see where they're at. If you're going to store them like that or in, plastic bags, that's totally fine. But if you had it in your heart that you wanted to roll these puppies up on top of each other, just keep in mind that if you're using chipboard sort of embellishments and buttons and, thicker things like that, you're really going to have a hard time rolling these up. So just think about how you want to store them before you decide exactly how you want to decorate them. I hope that makes sense. In terms of adding focal points to your snippet rolls, I kind of treat it like any other collage. I don't want to overdo it too much. I want them to actually be focal points. And if they're drowning amongst a lot of other eye-catching, popping things, they're not really as noticeable. So I really want them to pop. I like to use contrasting colors. And then the other thing is depending on what focal point you're adding, maybe you're using a couple accessory things like labels, words, numbers. I think it looks so good when things kind of pop off the edges. It gives them dimension and depth. So a lot of times I love these sticker books because you can cut part of the sticker and put the other half of the sticker back. Alternatively, you can fold the sticker over to the back because, nobody's going to be looking at the back depending on what you decide to do with these. Those are just a couple of decorating tips that I have. Don't limit yourself. If you feel like your collaged papers aren't really jiving, things that you can do to kind of link them together are using pieces of washi tape. You can outline things with gelatos. I love using gelatos, colored pencils. You can outline your focal points with charcoal pencil, like I do here, to really make them pop and do a little bit of shading. Those are all ways you can really spice these up. Our next scrap busting project are altered playing cards. Today is all about using the things that we have at our disposal, and this actually forced me to go through my stash, and I found these gorgeous vintage cards. I'm not going to be altering them up today, but this was a very pleasant surprise, and I actually am going to tuck these away into my journal. Some of them are very vintage, and I honestly don't even remember getting them. I don't know where they came from, but it was a really, really nice, pleasant surprise. So as for these altered playing cards, this has to be one of my absolute favorite scrap busting projects. They come together so quickly. They look amazing. If you don't have altered playing cards at your disposal, you can do the same with cardstock. Obviously, you won't have the playing card on the back. And as opposed to gluing these down, I do like to tuck them into my journal so that you can still see, the face card on the back. You're going to start by just going all over your playing card with some glue stick and just layering the scraps down. This is so easy. Now, I opted not to sew these. If you want to sew these, I think that would look fabulous too. Just don't think too hard about it. Start layering your scraps on top of each other. And once you layer your scraps, you're just going to flip the card over and then cut along the edges to get rid of any overhang. And then we're just going to add our focal points. The first card, I kind of wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I had these faux postage stamps that are like fairy tale, kind of Peter Rabbit sort of characters, and so I glued it down and I added a little bit of washi tape to kind of frame the little faux stamp. And I added some sticker flowers that I had, which I thought really made a cute little addition. Like, don't overthink these at all. Some of them I inked around the edges. I thought that looked really, really cute. And don't be afraid to use other supplies you have at your disposal. You don't have to just use your scraps. You can add washi like I do here. Obviously stickers, whatever you're using as your focal point. Grunge it up with a little paint. You can add some stickles. The other thing I really like to do with these is sometimes I'll put my stuff down at a focal point, and then just to distress it and weather it a little bit more and give them some texture, I like to take a stencil and put a light layer of modeling paste over top. You could, depending on the color of modeling paste you're using, you can leave it as is. And if it's white, you can add some watercolor paint on top or give it a little bit of luster with some gilding wax. There are just a ton of ways you can kind of add to these, layer them up, add many different layers, and you can either leave them as simple or make them as complex as you would like. And that's why I absolutely love making these altar playing cards. They come together so fast and they look incredible. It looks like a project you like slaved away over all day. And a lot of times what I'll do, you see here, is once I'm happy with the way the card looks and I am kind of done layering everything down, I'll go over it and stamp it either with that, the mail stamp that they put on postage stamps to mark it as like canceled, or I will actually take my little postage stamps, my rubber stamps, and stamp them over top, and I think it just makes it look beautiful and like grunged up. I just love that look. On a lot of the cards, I tried to use different styles of paper. A lot of times I would put some cardstock that I had altered and then, mix that with some brown paper packaging and then some book pages. I know they're small cards, so it's kind of hard to get, a ton of different papers in one shot. But if you rip them up, it's, pretty easy to do. I didn't tend to cover the card entirely. I'd like to leave a little bit of white space, which means you're not going to have crisp edges. You're going to kind of have, ripped edges with a little bit of the white part of the card showing. If you want it perfectly framed, then you're probably just going to have to cover the whole card in its entirety, which I guess I did for some, but I just really like that look where there's a little bit of white space on the card showing. Kind of, to me, it just looks sort of framed. I really like that look. And I ripped a lot of the scraps to make them smaller so I could get more variety of collage papers going on the card. But however you typically like to collage, that's the way I would go. Like I said, I got through a ton of scraps doing these, and honestly, I could probably put together a full deck of cards by the end of the afternoon if I really set my mind to it, because these truly are so much fun. And I really love mass making projects where I can do something and only take out a few different supplies. It's easy, but you can be very creative and challenge yourself with it, and you can repeat the process over and over and over and get better at something, and then within a few hours have a whole heap of ephemera to show for it. Those are my favorite projects to mass make. So for our third and final Scrapbuster project, we are making oversized faux postage stamps. I enjoyed making the ephemera earlier and using postage stamps so much, I thought, well, let's just make some more postage stamps. That's kind of the theme of this video, postage stamps. I have to say, I really apologize for the glare in this video. It's kind of the time of day and I forgot to shut my window. I didn't realize how bad the glare was until I sat down to edit this. So please bear with me. I'm sorry. I will try and keep that in mind next time. Okay, that being said, For these oversized postage stamps, all you need is some cardstock, your scraps, and whatever you want to use as a focal point. So just start by cutting a few pieces of cardstock that are a few inches wide, a few inches long, however large you want your faux stamps to be. Now, at the end of this, we will be taking some deckled edge scissors and giving it that postage stamp look, those frilly edges. If you don't have that, you can mimic it just by taking smaller scissors and kind of weaving your scissors in and out to create those little ruffles. Or you can just say, hey, heck with the classic postage stamp, edges. I'm just gonna tear the edges a little bit, and that works perfectly fine too. So guys, this is so easy. All we're doing is gluing our scraps down. We want to leave some white edge so that we can cut to make those deckled postage stamp edges. And once we have our scraps layered on top of each other, we're going to be creating focal points. Words, numbers, and a picture look amazing. That's the formula I love using here. A word, a picture, and or a number. I'm telling you, that is perfect. You can add some little bits here and there. I added some flower stickers, some stickles, ink them up. And then when you're done and you've added your deckled edges, all I'm doing is stamping over top of these, either with a faux postage stamp, those kind of like canceled stamps the post office uses. If you don't have any stamps, you can just make little squiggles with your pen, something like that. I'm telling you guys, this looks so good. And this is the perfect opportunity to use up all those little scraps you thought, what am I going to do with this? Like, they're so little. Should I just throw these away? No, save them for little bite-sized mini projects like these. In the interest of keeping this video short, I didn't do this, but how cool would it be, and maybe we'll do a video about this in the future, how cool would it be to make specifically themed stamp sets? So I had some Snoopy and dog themed stickers and stuff in front of me, and I didn't use them for that, but I was thinking, oh my gosh, how cool would it be to make a specifically themed stamp set, like Snoopy stamp set, like a beach stamp set, or like a seashell stamp set. So if you have seashell stickers, you're just collaging and putting specific different seashells on each postage stamp, just like the post office does. I believe they do this around like maybe Christmas time. Maybe I'm hallucinating, but I'm pretty sure I've seen the post office come out with specific themed stamp sets. Wouldn't it be so cool to make our own? You could have a botanical theme set where if you have a bunch of botanical stickers, you essentially, I have like one of the deco sticker packs I got from AliExpress is just filled with yellow stickers. So I could collage on on cardstock to make these oversized faux stamps, and then add a different yellow flower on each of them and write the add one of those little faux like labels or stamp label, and then just add the name of that yellow flower and make a whole set. Wouldn't that would look so good in a journal laid out wouldn't that be so cool to have a whole stamp set be used as page trim? Or maybe you have a specifically themed journal and you're adding each stamp to a signature in your journal, or adding them to, I don't know. There's a whole host of different things you could do with these. So now once I get fixated on an idea, I can't let it go and I have to go do it. So I'm pretty sure I am going to, in an upcoming video, we're going to work on creating stamp sets and looking at different ideas for those. I'm so excited. The wheels are turning. I'm telling you. If I think any harder about it, I think I might hurt myself. So let's finish up these faux postage stamps and take a look at the gorgeous pieces of ephemera we've created with a few lonely leftover scraps that were destined for the trash bin, and instead we transformed them and made something gorgeous out of them. Again, any way you can add another layer, add some flair, personalize these is absolutely perfect. They're gonna look gorgeous just by giving them those deckled edges and doing a little bit of stamping over top. These clearly look like a faux postage stamp. Depending on how big you go, you can either, keep these really small and utilize them as postage stamps, or you can actually use them as pockets, tucks, bookmarks, any other way you can think of in your journals. So guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you enjoyed this process as much as I did. I'm really looking for projects that allow me to utilize the things that I already have, keeping it simple. Sometimes simplicity can be absolutely beautiful and it can also lead to the most satisfying projects. I'm really looking to create things that don't require me to go out and buy additional supplies. I already have way too much of that. And I think a lot of you, from reading your comments and hearing from you, are kind of on that same train that I am. So, oh, and then if you haven't already seen the video that was the kind of the precursor to this, where I took a bunch of boring scraps and distressed them, make sure you check that out in the description box. Regardless of whether you're using them for these projects or a ton of others, they make a great base and just a great inspirational starting point for really any kind of project you can imagine. So if you enjoyed this and you want to see more of Ink and Papyrus, please hit that like and subscribe button, and I can't wait to see you the next time.